The most recent numbers reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics actually reported the median salary for registered nurses in the United States in 2024 was $93,600. Now, when you ask the average American if that's a good salary or not, most of them are going to say yeah, and I agree with them. But the thing is, one thing you got to realize is that a lot of nurses that I know either grew up in low or middle income families. They don't have a trust fund to fall on. Most of us, including many people that I know, became nurses because they wanted to escape poverty. Nurses who grew up in low-income communities aren't gonna understand what it means to invest in a Roth IRA, a 401k, to set money aside, because the earlier you do it, the more of a compounding effect you're going to have over the long term. You're not taught any of this. So when you do become a nurse, $93,600 is nothing. Because what's going to happen is when this nurse lands their first job, whether they're making $30 an hour or $100 an hour, this nurse is going to resort to buying luxury items. They're going to be picking up shifts not to add more to their 401k, not to pay off their student debts, not to pay off credit card debt, not to pay off an auto loan, but instead to add more debt than they previously had when they graduated nursing school. I've interviewed, I've spoken to, I've coached probably over 500 nurses by now who have told me one struggle that they had when graduating nursing school is they didn't know how to manage their money. I interviewed a nurse who during the pandemic took on several strike contracts, and by the time that she finished those contracts, a year later, had no idea what she had done with that money, and in addition to that, she didn't even know she had to pay taxes on that money. Thankfully, she's learned a valuable lesson, because today, obviously, the pandemic money has gone dry. There's no contracts in existence today that are going to be paying you as much as they were paying you during the pandemic, which is $6,000, $8,000, upwards of $10,000 per week. I know nurses who made $120,000 in 3 months during the pandemic. But later I'm going to talk about what this nurse did in order to ensure that even though we're not getting that pandemic money today, she's still making more today than the average nurse is. It's because of the choices she decided to make after that huge, costly mistake she made. Another thing that I've noticed nurses do often is the first thing they end up buying is the car of their dreams. And you know what? I fell victim to this mistake. When Monica and I first graduated nursing school, the one thing that I felt we needed, not wanted, but needed, and this is one thing you shouldn't conflate, your wants versus your need. We didn't need a car. I wanted a car. But we bought a car, and the first car that we bought was a $13,000 car. We had to roll up and roll down the windows because it didn't have automatic windows. And I quickly grew to hate that car because of that very reason. It was a Chevy Spark, but it was a $13,000 car. It's the perfect car for New York City living. You don't have to worry about looking for parking for hours on end. But I grew tired of it. I felt that by the time Monica was gonna start working, we would be able to afford a more expensive car. And even though we didn't exchange our small car for a brand new vehicle, we did exchange it for a car that was twice as much as that first car we purchased. We ended up buying a Buick Enclave, and I thought this car was gonna be the answer to our prayers. Oftentimes, Monica and I go on road trips with our families, and we'll have more than 5 passengers in our car, which is why I wanted an SUV with 7 seats. But then I realized when I had to bring it to work, I could not find parking. I was working at Jamaica Hospital making $37 an hour. So this was all done within the span of like 6 to 8 months. We bought the initial car for $13,000, exchanged it for this Buick Enclave, which was $29,000. So we went from a payment of like $230 to $536 a month, meaning we doubled our payment, our insurance went up, and in addition to that, I had nothing but frustration on a daily basis because I was working at least 5 days a week and could never find parking. And there were times where I would actually show up late to work for 20 to 30 minutes. We had that car for a few months before we decided to return the car and get another version of the first car that we had. So we went back to the dealership and ended up spending $15,000 on another Chevy Spark, but this time we had automatic windows on it. We still have that car today, and we thought we had corrected our mistakes. But when Monica and I received the call that I was gonna get a job in California making $65 an hour, which was about $15 more per hour than I was making in New York Presbyterian, I told Monica we should really reward ourselves this time. I had been a nurse at that point for about 4 years. Monica had been a nurse for about 3 years. And we were driving that small car for about 3 years at that point. So we spent $76,000 on this Volvo XC90 2017. And Monica hated the fact that I told her we needed this car for a good year to 2 years after we purchased this vehicle. She couldn't believe we were spending $1,270 a month just to own this car. And this is the trap that a lot of nurses fall in. One of the biggest wastes of your money, in my opinion, are your car and using your credit card to make payments on things that you're not going to pay by the end of the billing cycle. So if you think you're not making enough money as a nurse, the reason for that could very well be that you're spending way too much as a nurse. So let me give you some tips of how you can change this mindset, this habit of yours. One thing that you need to do is realize that if you're a nurse and you're working in any part of the United States besides Northern California, you are not making enough money. As a nurse who works in any other part of the country, you're probably making anywhere from $30 to $60, maybe $70 an hour. That's the reality. And when you consider the cost of goods, the cost of services, the cost of inflation, the cost of living today, it is becoming increasingly difficult for a single income earner, or even harder for a single income earner with a stay-at-home spouse and kids. Unless you have a partner who is also bringing in income, life is just going to be very challenging for you. So the one thing you need to do is figure out how to increase your income. Me personally, because I have this entrepreneurial mindset, the one thing I always tell people is, if you have a hobby, if you have something you're super passionate about, hone in on that and start thinking about ways in which you can turn that hobby into a business. Start it as a side business. And I'll give you some examples. I have interviewed nurses who have written several books, nurses who have started their own business. For example, if you are someone who loves creating study guides, make those study guides on Canva. Hire somebody on Fiverr. Hire somebody on Upwork to create them for you if you can't draw. Sell them. Start marketing yourself online so you can spread the word and more people can know about your side hustle. More people can buy your products. I also know nurses who started their own med spas. This is the one thing you're going to hear about a lot. If you're going to start a med spa, the best way to go about it is by getting an advanced degree as a nurse practitioner. Because as an advanced practitioner, you'll be able to practice independently of a physician in many states in the US. And I've interviewed nurse practitioners who are earning well over $300,000 a year doing what they love. I also know a tech. He's not even a nurse, and I mention him all the time, and I'm going to be interviewing him soon, if I haven't by the time I release this video. But a tech who worked in my department, and this guy is a powerhouse. He started a business where he could provide mobile lab services to patients of physicians in clinics. He is going to be making well over 7 figures because he expanded from mobile lab services to urinalysis, genetic testing, and now what he is doing is wound care with the use of placental tissue. He has nurse practitioners, nurses, techs, phlebotomists, and he has a physician on his payroll. That is ingenuity at work. It takes a lot of gut to do what someone like that is doing. So these are just some of the ways. Start a side hustle. The next thing you can do is, let's say you work in an area where the pay is dramatically lower than the rest of the state. Instead of working as a staff nurse, think about becoming an agency nurse. Now, what is an agency nurse? Well, an agency nurse is a nurse that you can work for the same hospital. You're technically like a travel nurse for the hospital that you work in, but you don't get benefits from that hospital. So I interviewed a nurse previously. She worked at a facility where they were paying her, I think, like $50 an hour in LA. And she left that facility to do travel nursing, came back to the facility and asked if she could work as an agency nurse without the benefits. Well, lo and behold, they agreed to it, and instead of paying her $50 an hour, they paid her $100 an hour. She doubled her income by tweaking the way in which she was paid by the facility and the benefits she was receiving from them. If you're someone who can get benefits from either another employer while working part-time or full-time, or if you have a partner who is able to give you the benefits like health insurance and dental insurance, then becoming an agency nurse is the right move to make. Another thing you can consider is, this is where I go back to that nurse that I interviewed who made $1 million during COVID, realizing that she did not pay taxes the entire year while she was making all that COVID money. She went back to the blackboard and she decided to figure out a way to make more money while not being a staff nurse. She stumbled across per diem nursing, and she calls herself the per diem plug or something to that effect on Instagram. But what she does now is signs up for per diem shifts in several hospitals in her region. They pay her the per diem rate, in some cases up to like $100 an hour, sometimes more. So she could easily make about $1,000 or more per day if she picks up a per diem shift. And she can pick it up any time of the week. For example, let's say you need some extra money this week. Well, go on these apps, go on these Facebook groups, contact these facilities who need employees on that day and pick up some extra shifts. Now, you don't get benefits in these cases, obviously, because you're a per diem employee. You're only going to be working as needed. So you don't get benefits. You need to figure out ways to get benefits if you're not getting them through this method. But now let's bring it back to the staff nurses. Let's say you're a staff nurse and doing these things is not an option for you. Then you have to think about in what ways does your employer increase your wage based on the type of work that you do. For example, if you're a day shift employee, think about other shifts you might be able to work. Can you work evening shift? Can you work night shift? Can you work weekends, all weekends? Because in a lot of facilities, if you're working weekends, you do get paid a bonus. Also think about pursuing higher levels of the staffing ladder in your facility. Like some facilities have unions, and in these unions, they allow you to earn more money based on what level of nursing you're at in that facility. For example, the hospital system I work in has nurse 1, nurse 2, nurse 3, nurse 4. Nurse 1 is just like a brand new nurse. A nurse 2 is a nurse that has more than 6 months of experience, but has not performed any committee work or has not applied for the nurse 3 position. But if you're a nurse 3 or a staff nurse 3, this type of nurse would have had to participate in a committee or perform some teaching in the community that contributed in some way to educating the community, and several other factors. This type of nurse would get an additional 5% on top of their salary. And if you go on to the nurse 4, you get 8% on top of the base pay. So with all of these, let's say you're a night shift nurse, a weekend nurse, and you're also a staff nurse 4, you could potentially be increasing your salary by upwards of like 30%. And in addition to that, there are hospitals that will pay you an additional fee to become a charge nurse, pay you to train, like orienting new employees, and they'll also pay you for completing additional education, right? Like if you become a CCRN or just get certified in the specialty that you're in. So think about all these ways in which you could increase your salary. And by the time you calculate all of that, instead of making $93,600 a year, you could just as easily be making well over $150,000 a year. And that is possible if you are smart about the way you approach your career. But remember, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money you make, it's how much money you get to keep. So once you start earning this money, do not inflate your lifestyle. Maintain your lifestyle at the same level that you were living it while you were making the $93,600 a year. Because I make $110 an hour now. I used to make $37 an hour. And Monica and I made the mistake of inflating our lifestyles. She makes $142 an hour now. We only work 20 hours a week. We don't pick up shifts. The last time I picked up an additional shift at work was over 2 years ago. Now, I'm not gonna lie, like I would love to pick up additional shifts. And honestly, I would benefit from it because I've dedicated so much time and money to this app and business that I'm building with my co-founders Sumit. And the app is Map My Pay. If you don't know about it, like I've talked about this several times, it basically allows you as a nurse and various nursing specialties to compare your salary and your cost of living to over 1,000 cities in the US. And the app includes demographics, the weather, schools, in case you're interested in putting your kids in school, like you have a family and you want to know what the elementary schools or the middle schools or the high schools look like. We have that in the app. It also includes the crime data because some people don't want to move to crime-ridden areas regardless of how much they're going to get paid. We have spent over $50,000 on that app by this point, and we're bleeding about $6,000 a month in employee wages alone. So I could just as easily benefit from working overtime because imagine, I'm working 20 hours a week. Monica's working 20 hours a week. We're basically working the number of hours that the average nurse works per week. So yeah, I could benefit from these hours because we've gotten to a point where I'm depleting most of our funds. But I'm doing my very best to not get to that point because spending the time on building this app that I feel is going to benefit the entire nursing profession is more worth it to me than picking up additional hours at work. Like I sold some of our cryptocurrencies just so we can use that income towards our business. I'm willing to sell most of my stake in some things in order to invest that money in our business because I believe in it so much. And we want to include jobs in that app so nurses could apply to jobs directly through the app. You are able to see the hospitals in the app, so hopefully you're going to be able to apply for jobs within those hospitals. Anyways, do you think you're making enough? If so, let me know in the comment section below. If not, let me know in the comment section below. And if you want to watch more videos like this, then please subscribe to this channel and follow us for more.